welcome back to my channel. We are going to talk about a color wheel today. We are going to advance our color theory lessons and start talking about intense color and dull color and what that means exactly and how you manipulate your paint to get your colors to dull down. So here we are, let's get started. Alright, so I have some paper. This is a palette here. And I have some yellow, primary yellow. Now primary yellow is going to be a cooler yellow. So I'm just going to put a little drip of that on my palette there. And then I have this benzimidazolene yellow, which is sort of interesting. It's a warmer yellow. You can see it now that I put it next to this other yellow, that it's warmer, right? This one's cooler, this one's warmer. I'm gonna put a little naphthol red light on my palette. Naphthol red light. And that's gonna give me, this is a more of an orangey color. I like to put a couple of different reds. I like to do a cad red medium. And you can see these are sort of very similar. The cad red may seem like a little darker. And then I like to put a little magenta on my palette. You can see that it's cooler, darker, and will mix really well with some blues to make some purples. I like to do a little ultramarine. There are some other blues that some artists will claim that you need to have on your palette, like Prussian blue is just talking about intensities and also like creating a color wheel. So I do like to put a little white on my palette just because some of the colors are transparent inherently. Some of these yellows are going to be transparent colors. So we put a little bit of white into them to liberate them and to make them more opaque so that we can really see them on the page. All right, so we have a circle. We're going to put just a little sort of notation so that we know where to put the colors. I like to put a little Y for yellow, down at the bottom a P for purple, and then I think about it. You want to get the primaries in there in a sort of triangular shape. So what makes purple is a red and a blue. And then what happens when we add blue and yellow together, we get a green. So kind of put that in the middle there. And what happens when we get red and yellow, we get an orange. And then we can go in between each of these colors and put this tertiary colors. So blue and green makes a blue green, yellow and green makes a yellow green, yellow and orange makes a yellow orange, orange and red makes a red orange, red purple makes a red purple, and then blue and purple makes a blue purple. The thing we're going to do is get our yellow up in the top part of the color wheel. I like to keep the yellow at the top because inherently, without adding any white or black to it, yellow is going to be your lightest value without adding any white or black. And you can see it's very transparent. I can't even cover up the pencil markings. So maybe I'll liberate a little bit and put a little white into it just so that it's more opaque. And I'll put a little swatch of that. And then now let's think about that. We're gonna put a little yellow over here. We're going to start talking about complementary colors, and I like to think about complementary not necessarily as that they're complementary, like, hey yellow, you're looking good today. Rather, yellow's complement, the purple, completes the color. They're more like yin and yang. So before we get there, let's get the blue. Let's get all of the primaries on here. work really nice together. So let's start talking about our secondary colors. Secondaries are made by mixing two primaries together. So let's start with our purple. And I said before, I like to use the magenta because it's cooler. It mixes well with the blue. It stays pretty rich and lovely to create a nice rich purple. Put that sort of in between the red and the blue. And then we're going to put this down here. This red purple. Now these two are complementaries. So these two go together. Okay. Now, let's continue this conversation. We mix yellow and red together. We're going to get our orange. So let's mix those together. And I'm going to mix it with the warmer orange. I'm sorry, the warmer yellow, so that it creates a nice warm, right in between that orange and right between the red and the yellow, create this orange. And that's gonna be blue's sort of best friend, right across from us. They have like a love-hate relationship. They make each other seem stronger and more brilliant and bright, but if you mix them, they start to dull down each other. And if you mix them in equal parts, then they will actually turn into mud. They cancel each other out. So now these guys are gonna be best friends here. Another set of complementaries. And then let's see here, we gotta mix the blue and the yellow to get, and now blue is a cooler color, and I'm gonna use the cooler yellow to make this green. I find it makes a clearer, cleaner green, opposed to mixing the more orangey yellow. It will dull it down. The cooler yellow tends to keep the green richer and brighter longer. Green right there in the middle of yellow and blue. And we're going to put that with the red. And so you're starting to develop your complementary combinations. Colors that are across from each other on the color wheel. All right, so now we have to make the tertiaries, and that is made by mixing a primary with a secondary color. So let's take this orange and we mix it now with this more yellow to create this yellow orange. Across the way, that complementary is going to be the blue purple. They go really well together. And then we're going to now go to the other end. What is the tertiary for yellow and green is yellow-green. So we take our green and we add more yellow. Red purple. So we make our purple color again, and I like to add, now that I have this sort of magenta and blue color together, I'm going towards this red, so I'm going to add a little bit of that to that sort of purple color that I made. So now we're getting through it. The 12-step color wheel, starting with our primaries. Mixing our primaries together, we get our secondaries. And then mixing our primary and our secondary together, we get our tertiaries. Set up. So then let's mix our tertiary blue-green by mixing blue and green together. So and then that's going to be the opposite. Where is it opposite from on the color wheel? Is the red-orange. So then mixing now, and I already have some orange here. I'm going to mix more of this red into it. Our sort of 12-step color wheel, primary, secondaries, tertiaries, and we've now talked about colors that are across from each other on the color wheel are complementaries, which is very important when we start talking about breaking down a color's brilliance. One of our first color combinations is our yellow, and our purple as a complementary mix. So let's see what happens now when we have just the tiniest drop of purple to it. Those are complementary colors. They're across from each other on the color wheel. You can see that it does break down its intensity. It gets darker. I probably mixed it a little too quick. So let's now bring it back. We can always add more. So here I am adding a little bit more yellow because the first initial addition of purple, I went a little too heavy with it. So I'm just showing that you can bring it back, just adding a little bit more yellow to this sort of purple yellow mixture, just to show you that there's some variations in the brightness and the dullness that you can down. And it can go in the opposite direction too. So we start with this purple. Maybe make a little pile of it. What happens when you add just the tiniest drip of yellow? I'm just adding just the tiniest little dab of yellow. You can see it does dull it down, knocks it down. It's actually really a gorgeous color. Let's do it again, knock it down just a little bit, add a little tiny bit of that yellow. It's knocking down the saturation even more. Do you see how brilliant and clear and pure this purple is? And then these guys are more sophisticated. This is like the sort of the colors you see in sort of sophisticated homes. They like these dulled down colors. Eventually you'll add so much of the yellow and purple together that it will just be mud. So again, we're getting back towards sort of this equal parts, yellow and purple together. And it just creates mud, which you could use in some interesting way. Now, let's say we're doing a painting and we want to talk about, make a color look richer. And maybe we don't always have to go with the colors right out of the tube. Say if I have this dulled yellow color and I want to make it seem more intense. So you can see here I've added, this is yellow right out of the tube, and I've added a little bit of this purple. to dull that yellow down, but say this is in my painting and I want this to seem really bright and intense. Let's take another one of our complementary colors, red and green. Maybe I take a little red and green, I'm sorry, a little red and yellow to make a green. And then I now know if I mix complementaries together, it will dull them down. So let's add a little bit of red to this green, kind of dull it down, make it real kind of muddy. Now I can put this next to this yellow to make that yellow now seem very bright and bold and brilliant, because relatively it's more intense than this greenish, mud greenish color. I'll even go further and add a little bit more red on the other side so that we can get this now brownish color. You can start to see alone this color looked very dull, but putting duller colors next to it, it somehow makes it feel more brilliant, more intense, and brighter. Of course, if we go in with a very bright color, let's take a little bit of red, maybe add a little bit of white to it, make it a pretty light pink. It's very bright. We put that next to that yellow. That yellow is now going to seem dull again in relationship to that brilliant, bright pink. So let's say we're taking that pink and we now want to add a little bit of green to it to dull it down. So again, let's make a little pile of green. Again, colors across from each other on the color wheel are complements, and they will dull the colors down when added together. So I'm going to add a little bit of this green to that pink, and we have this nice swatch. You can see it's duller now. There's a little bit of sort of dullness that's happening to it. Let's add some more green to it. Little dab. Put a little swipe. Again, it's getting even duller. Let's add a little bit more. Make it sort of more muddy, and it's not necessarily bad, it's just how we use it. How do we use this in paintings? Either to recreate life or to create abstractions. So again, you can still keep adding it until it would eventually just be muddy and dull and no color whatsoever. So let's do another set. So we've got our red, let's say red right out of the tube. This is Naphthol right out of the tube. I'm doing it in a watercolory kind of water way, so you can see it gets transparent on the page because the white of the page comes through. And then let's add a little green to it. So we're gonna make a green. Thanks for joining me. Hope you liked this lesson on the color wheel and how to manipulate intensity and dullness in your paint colors.